So I've read a grand total of 77 books in the year of 2024, and indubitably there were bound to have been some duds in the mix. This is not the worst of the worst, but it's not the best of the best either. So this will be my most disappointing reads of 2024 coming in this video. Hi everyone, my name is Rose, also known as TA Summers. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a part of my video series in bookish superlatives for the year of 2024. As I mentioned in the intro of this video, I read a total of 77 books in the year of 2024. That was two more than I wanted as a yearly goal, so I'll do a separate video where I break down all the stats in terms of what I actually read, how many YA books, how many adult books, things like that. That'll be a separate video entirely, but I knew I wanted to do kind of like a video series where I'm breaking down some of the superlatives of the books that I read in 2024, and I wanted to go ahead and start off with the most disappointing. So this list is going to be a total of 7 books that I'm going to talk about. These are definitely not the worst of the worst that I picked up in 2024, not by a long shot, but there were definitely some that I wish the experience had been better overall for the experience of when I picked these up. So I'm gonna be very, very quick with most of these books. Some of them will have more dedicated reviews that I'm going to put on the channel to be able to talk about more at length, but we're just going to go ahead and dive in. 7 books, 7 of the most disappointing reads that I had in 2024. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. So the first one that I want to start off with in terms of my most disappointing reads of 2024 is one I don't think I've had the opportunity to talk on the channel before, or in terms of things. And I give this one 3 stars because I did enjoy the experience, but it really didn't measure up to what I thought it was going to be in the overarching narrative. This is a physical book that I got during my Toronto trip to Canada, during my birthday trip, which was mid-year of 2024. This is Bad Like Us by Gabriella Laporte, and as you can see, this is the cover right here. I give this overall 3 stars. I really wish that Bad Like Us had measured up to what I expected it to be. As you can see, this looks like it may be a very, very intriguing mystery thriller that's set in the woods and terms of things. And I was really looking forward to that mystery thriller element, like for this, in terms of following a group of teens who are going on a camping trip and a vacation, like at a private resort lodge that they're all camping at, like during this particular time. Someone ends up dead, and they have to put the pieces together to be able to figure out who done it in terms of things, and stop the killer if the killer is going to strike again. I really felt that there were a lot of elements of this that I did actually like, particularly with respect to getting to know the teens and seeing their banter and their rapport with each other and certain elements of it. But the most disappointing aspects of this was that there was constant head hopping, constant moving back and forth between the present day and the past. And I don't think all of that hopping was necessary, because it broke the tension so many times with respect to the events that were happening in this respective book. And you're following so many different characters. There's like, I think 8 active characters that are in this book. One of them dies, and really the most developed of the characters are the ones that are on that are pictured, the 5 that are pictured on the cover here. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I have a dedicated review to Bad Like Us. But I was so disappointed in terms of the potential that this could have had in terms of things. There were elements of it that were solid, but the vast majority of the problems with this respective book were there were too many characters, some of them were underdeveloped, and too much head hopping that broke the tension and just really impacted my enjoyment of this respective novel. So this was Bad Like Us by Gabrielle Lepore. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I liked elements of it, but ultimately it was one of the more disappointing reads that I had for 2024, unfortunately. So it's not the last book that I'm going to pick up by Gabrielle Lepore, but I think it could have been a lot better than it was. Second book that I'm going to talk about, I have a dedicated review already on the channel for it, and I read it early on in 2024, was Desperate Measures by Katie Robert, the first book in the Wicked Villains series. I really wanted to like this respective book in terms of it being a retelling of Aladdin, a very steamy adult retelling of Aladdin where Jasmine gets it with Jafar in terms of things. But that particular book, I knew going in some of the issues that were with it in terms of like things. I was given a heads up in terms of some of the non-consensual stuff and like some of the more controversial stuff. But ultimately, what disappointed me about Desperate Measures was just how tedious it ended up being in terms of the read, and like just not really jumping off in the way that I was hoping it would in terms of things. I wish that, like, you know, like, I felt like that the characters were flat. I felt like I couldn't really, I could see the chemistry, but I couldn't really feel the chemistry between the characters in terms of things. And in the end, it was a lot of different elements that were mixed in this respective read that just did not land with me. So that ended up being the first book in the series that I tried, and it's probably going to be the last that I try in that respective series. Not the last thing that I'm going to read from Katie Robert, but unfortunately that particular series just did not work for me. And for the level of intrigue it had, I wish that I could have been able to really get into it. I had a couple of people message me about my review about Desperate Measures in terms of things, saying that they thought my review of it was a little bit more entertaining than the book. What I did for the review was actually pretty fun. Like, I kind of did like this creative prompt where like I had 2 of the characters from Disney's Aladdin talking to 2 of the characters from the Supermassive Games Hades game. If you know of Zag and Medusa from that game, I kind of had like a banter that was going between them in terms of things that kind of related to the book. So I decided to have fun with that review, but I wish that book had landed better for me in terms of things. So that's Desperate Measures by Katie Robert. That was the first book in the Wicked Villains series. Unfortunately, that ended up being a disappointment for me. Unfortunately. Third book that I'm going to talk about is Split Decision by Christina C. Jones. It is the second book in the New Heights novella series, and I'll put a picture up here for your reference. So this one, I can definitely tell you what the problem was with this respective book. I had read all of the novellas for this respective trilogy in 2024, and I had enjoyed the first book in the series, and I had enjoyed the third book in the series. But this middle book, which chronicled the relationship between Jonathan and Winnie, I was disappointed by. And I thought Jonathan's perspective of it and like essentially like his part of the story was fine as it was in terms of things, and getting to know that character in terms of things was fine. But I think 2 elements of this respective story really just did not work for me. Number one, it felt a lot more tedious in terms of pacing compared to some of Christina C. Jones's other novellas, and I wasn't sure why there was withholding of certain pieces of information regarding the 2 main characters' relationship in this respective novella. I think holding back that information didn't work well for the pacing of the overarching novella in terms of things, and that felt odd to me compared to the other books in the series, which actually did a really good job with pacing and talking about the characters and being able to showcase the characters in terms of their chemistry and things like that. The other part of this was, I think Winnie's character was a big issue for me in Split Decision, because not only was she very much violating certain boundaries of Jonathan in multiple terms of the book. I'm not going to get into it because I did talk about it on the channel before, in my review of it. I'll put it in the cards above and in the description down below if you missed it. But Winnie just violated Jonathan's boundaries on a lot of different things, and that did not sit well with me, number one. Number two, there were a couple of scenes in terms of Winnie doing things that didn't really make sense to me in terms of her character, and it was a bit frustrating to be able to follow her character. I understood her chemistry with Jonathan, and even some of the scenes between them were actually really sweet and really steamy, and like I got into it for an adult romance in terms of like just watching these characters and being able to reconnect with them in the overarching series, because it brings in different characters from the respective New Heights series into the mix. So like each book like has these characters recur, but ultimately for Split Decision, I did not care for a number of different things in it that just threw me out of the experience of really enjoying that novella for what it offered. And you would think on paper, considering the fact that like Winnie's a personal trainer and some of the things that are elements of that respective book, that it would land with me, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. So I would just say that's one of my more disappointing reads for 2024, Split Decision by Christina C. Jones, the second book in the New Heights series. Unfortunately, just wasn't to be. The fourth book that I'm going to talk about is The Way I Am Now by Amber Smith. This is a YA, also considered to be new adult as well. It is the sequel to The Way That I Used to Be, which actually I did like elements of, but I understood that there were problems with it in terms of things. I was very disappointed by The Way I Am Now with the way it chose to handle several issues, and essentially a lot of time jumps that really did not develop the character of Eden in a way that I thought would be satisfying. I did like certain elements of that in terms of where it showed the relationship between Eden and Josh in terms of their reconnection and being able to have certain to deal with certain issues that they were dealing with in their respective lives, and like during the time of their relationship in terms of things, while Eden's navigating going to college and having all these different things in the wake of the testimony for the trial that is looming like in the larger part of this respective story. But ultimately, my major issues, and I have a dedicated review to The Way I Am Now on the channel already, and I talk about it at length in terms of what happens with it, but I did not like the way that it chose to deal with certain very key issues in terms of Josh's and Eden's relationship. And it felt like Eden really didn't have a whole arc of development in the way that some of the other characters did. Josh specifically had a whole character arc that was way more developed than Eden's was in The Way I Am Now. And it felt like this should have been Eden's story to have that kind of full circle coming into terms things. And she felt like not only kind of like sidelined a little bit in terms of comparison, but also the fact that she just felt like she was like just having so many setbacks, and like her character growth was just not showcased really, like comparatively speaking, compared to the times that she kept falling over and over again. And normally I would be okay with seeing like, you know, a character like, you know, going through the motions and going through a lot of difficult things, but with the way that it was done in the Way I Am Now, I just thought it was a much weaker companion novel compared to The Way That I Used to Be in terms of what that chose to do. So unfortunately, I just couldn't recommend it, and I did not care for it in the way that I was hoping that I'd be able to in terms of it being a follow-up. I thought it would do certain elements better even than the way I used to be, but unfortunately it dropped the ball. It dropped the ball pretty hard. So that is The Way I Am Now by Amber Smith, which is the second book to The Way I Used to Be duology. Unfortunately, that was a disappointing read for me in 2024. To talk about is technically a reread, and my rereading of it kind of it was disappointing in terms of revisiting this respective novel. I've mentioned on the channel before that I've read From Zuri Day before, and this was one that I picked up again in 2024 to be able to read. This was Lessons from a Younger Lover by Zuri Day. This is a contemporary adult romance that follows a school teacher who has a connection with a much younger guy who happens to be the brother of the principal at the school that she is teaching at. And she gets to know him. She gets to know his daughter, and they basically have all these different ups and downs that they have to navigate in terms of their respective relationship, in terms of the age gap between them, and overcoming certain things in their relationship for the obstacles that are put in front of them. But the main thing that I said in my video review of this was that there was just so many different conflicts in this novel that it felt to the point where it was just too much, way too much. And it got to the point where if it had just been certain issues relating to the challenges they had, in terms of their the age gap between them, and certain challenges they had in their respective relationship, and even the main character, Gwen, getting to know Ransom, and navigating the relationship with his young daughter as well, I could have believed that. But considering everything else that happens also in addition to that, it got to the point where I was not able to suspend my disbelief in terms of everything that was going on after. If anything, it made certain things about it just really not, it soured me on the experience in terms of things. And then also certain stereotypes I was not okay with in terms of the rereading of this. I know it was written in the late 2000s, I think 2008, 2009, around that time. That was around the first time that I had read it. And revisiting it, it made it clear to me that certain elements of it did not age well, and plus some of those elements where it went beyond my suspension of disbelief, it just didn't work for me. So I gave this, I think, either 2.5 or 3 stars. I thought it was okay, but it really didn't meet the level of expectation that I had for it. It's such a cute cover too. The audiobook experience, which is the way that I read it this time around, was good. Had solid readers for it, but ultimately I felt that it could have been a lot better than what it was in terms of things, and it kind of disappointed me in terms of the overarching read. And I'm hoping to be able to pick up a lot more of Zuri Day's books in terms of things and review them on the channel. But I think there are better works that are representative of her own work other than this one. But it did have a cute cover. And I was glad to be able to pick it up, but unfortunately it just didn't land with me. So that was Lessons from a Younger Lover by Zuri Day, one of my more disappointing reads of 2024. Next book that I want to talk about, which is the 6th book that I found was one of my more disappointing reads of 2024, was Four Found Dead by Natalie D. Richards. This one definitely disappointed me as far as a YA mystery thriller went. And usually Natalie D. Richards, I've read a number of her works at this point, and I found something to enjoy with them, but this one challenged me. This one challenged me quite a bit in terms of things. This was the story of a group of teens led by Joe, who are working their last day in a movie theater which is inside a mall that is set to be shut down after the closing of this respective day, and they're all like finishing up their shifts and things like that. And then one teen who happens to go into the movie theater is seen by Joe carrying a gun into the theater, and she does not tell anybody at first. And I kept wondering, why is she not telling anybody? Why is she not telling anybody? Like, what is the issue in terms of her? Like, I know, like, she's a teenager, she's scared, and she doesn't trust this respective person who comes into the theater and is acting shady and weird and things like that. But it just baffled me in terms of how this was set up to set the events in motion for things. I couldn't suspend disbelief in terms of the reasons why Joe chose to do what she did, and for how kind of monotone her and glib her reaction was to some of these series of events. I was like, there's a mismatch here that just isn't working. I don't think this is doing justice to set the ball in motion for this respective thriller to happen in terms of things. And then you see the group of teens who are trying to run for their lives and outrun the gunmen in terms of what they end up doing. And essentially, like, how it has moments where it is emotionally charged and does well in terms of getting into like the heavier elements in terms of what happens to the teens as they're trying to survive, as they're trying to figure out the best way to escape and things like that. But the setup just really it was underwhelming, and also just odd in terms of how it was done to set it up to get those wheels in motion in terms of setting off the chain of events that transpire in this respective novel. And I wish it could have been better for what it offered, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. And I wish that it could have been better in terms of the setup and being able to march to its respective conclusion. I think it could have been a lot more compelling. The premise was definitely compelling, and there were definitely moments where, like, I definitely felt for the teens as they were trying to survive, but I just did not understand how the wheels of that were set in motion, and some of the tonal mismatches that were told in that respective work. But I wish it could have been better. I think I gave this 2.5 out of 5 stars, if I remember correctly. I did like the audiobook, but unfortunately the respective novel just didn't stick the landing as much as I was hoping. So that was For Found Dead by Natalie D.E. Richards, one of my more disappointing reads of 2024. And then the last one that I'm going to cover in this respective video, and it's going to have its own dedicated review on the channel in terms of me unpacking a lot of issues with respect to this novel. And I was really, really anticipating. It was one of my most anticipated reads of 2024, and some of you who have probably seen some of my other videos, like talking about it briefly in terms of things, will probably already know what this one is. It Waits in the Forest by Sarah Das. I think the most compelling part of this respective work was following Selena's journey as like a girl who is just trying to grapple with a lot of different things as she's living in the on the Caribbean island of St. Lucia. She's doing her fortune telling business, trying to make money, trying to tend to her sick mother who is in a coma, grappling with the death of her father. A lot of different compelling elements in terms of things. But then there's also another element where you get a bit of a dive into Caribbean mythology as well in terms of things. And you would think that would have a more pronounced like focus within this respective work in terms of things, in terms of Selena grappling with that, and like trying to navigate like these ominous threats that are happening and mysterious events that are happening on the island in terms of things. But unfortunately, this book was way too long, way too bloated for the type of narrative it was trying to accomplish. Because there are pieces of Selena's story that you get into it, but then there's also these side stories that accompany it that are supposed to get to make you feel for some of the characters who lose their lives or have something horrible happen to them in terms of things. And I felt like so many times some of those side stories broke some of the tension that was being established. And then there was a very pronounced love triangle, which I feel like it was repetitive in terms of how long it was drawn out, and certain things, elements of it that were drawn out that really just didn't add to the overarching experience. And then you would think, with the way that this is called, It Waits in the Forest, in terms of things, that the forest would have a more pronounced role in this respective story. It did not, comparatively speaking, compared to certain other parts of the novel in terms of things. I just felt like there were a lot of great ideas and even compelling moments in this novel, but the execution of it was all over the place, and it could have been it could have landed a lot better than it did. But I'll have a dedicated review of that on the channel to talk about in more in depth in terms of the things that I liked about it, the things I didn't like about it. But that's a general summation in terms of what issues I had with It Waits in the Forest. I think I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. But at the same time, it was one of my most disappointing reads of 2024, and I wish it could have been a better experience. I was heavily looking forward to it, but unfortunately it didn't land with me the way that I was hoping it would. And yeah, that kind of bums me out in terms of things. I do have several of Sarah Dassa's other books to be able to read on the channel, and I'll definitely give those dedicated reviews, but I was hoping for a little bit more from this one, unfortunately. So that is It Waits in the Forest by Sarah Dass. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I wish it could have landed better. It was one of my more disappointing reads of 2024. And so that is it for my respective video for this, my most disappointing reads of 2024. Not the worst, but not the best. We'll get into the worst probably in one of the next videos in terms of things, which I'll have a lot to say in terms of things. And I'll also have a best of video up for as part of my superlatives as well. That'll be coming pretty soon in terms of things. But if you made it this far, thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be informed of when I post new videos. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next video.